is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. That's brand new stuff from an album, a release, a monster called Jesus Christ the Exorcist. That song was called Gather the People. And on the line right now to gather the people and give them some information about this this tremendous rock opera is the creator of it, a super accomplished musician, the one and only Neal Morse. Neal, how are you, man?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. And I'll tell you what, Neal, I'm just going to tell you straight up. I've only had the record for a couple of days. So as you can imagine, for something that is as expansive as this, I have not really had the chance to dig in deep to it. And so I'm gonna ask you to dig in for me with some of this, because I don't think this is a superficial release at all. I think this is the kind of release that you got to kind of put the headphones on and get away from people for a few hours and really dig into. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, yeah, I think so. Sure, I think it's at about an hour and 50 minutes,
right.
And it's best eaten in one meal, I think.
Sure.
So maybe if you have a 2-hour drive and a good system in your car, I mean, that'd be a cool way to take it all in.
Sure.
But you could listen to the first half, Act 1. That's how I still think of it in terms of like a show, like a Broadway show.
Sure.
So I think of it in terms of Act 1 and Act 2. Of course, it's all kind of broken down a little bit differently on the CDs and the LPs. The LP is in like three LPs, so it's broken down differently. But you could do it in different portions. I mean, I did that when I was a kid with Jesus Christ Superstar. I didn't usually listen to the whole thing. I'd listen to this one side for a while, and so whatever is your pleasure.
Sure, I hear you, man. Well, Neal, let's talk about Jesus Christ the Exorcist. It is a very expansive release, to say the least. It's as you said, it is a rock opera. It feels like it is made for that kind of an environment to present it. Talk a little bit for you about the journey to release it, because from what I read, this is definitely not something you wrote in a little bit of time. This is a decade of your life that was committed to crafting this and completing it.
Well, it was spanned a decade, but probably the time I was actually writing it was probably something like 3 months.
Okay.
I think. It started in 2008. That's when this friend of mine, Michael Kaplan, he called me, and he's so funny. He said, "Hey, Neal, I was listening to Jesus Christ Superstar with some friends last night." He talks really fast, and they were all saying, "Oh man, somebody needs to do this. Somebody needs to do a new rock opera based on the Gospels." And I said, "I got the guy. Come on, you got to do it. He's very persuasive.
Sure.
I laughed and I said, "Well, I'll think about it. I'll pray about it." And of course, like a month later or so, I began to feel like I should. And I can't remember what albums I was in between, but I was kind of in between. Maybe something like in between Sola Scriptura and The Whirlwind or something like that.
Okay.
So I took about 2 months writing the first draft, which was 2.5 hours long. The first version of it. And then I took about a month demoing it, and I had some friends help me sing it. And then Michael Kaplan went out to shop it as a Broadway show.
Okay.
Because he's a New York guy.
Okay.
And a lot of people really liked it, but nobody wanted to actually, produce it. So then it just kind of sat on the shelf for many years, and I just thought, well, Lord, when a door opens, open a door for this thing when you're ready. And so it just sat on the shelf for about, I guess, 9 years, and then maybe 10. And then I had this idea to do it at Morse Fest 2018, was it? Yeah, it would be 2018. Okay. And one of the main reasons, it's kind of a funny thing to say, but one of the main reason why I wanted to do that piece was because Mike Portnoy was on tour with the Sons of Apollo all year long. So right. I didn't have Mike, so it was like, well, what can we do without where that Mike isn't required? You know, he's
Right.
kind of a required thing for so much of the music that I do.
Right.
And I thought, well, we can do the Jesus musical. So then, really interestingly, I think, so come around, and that was Morse Fest was September of last year.
Okay.
So come around to like June of last year, I'm feeling the pressure of like I need to rewrite Jesus Christ the Exorcist. I need to rewrite it, but I've got these other projects that I'm wrapping up. We're in the middle of the Great Adventure with the Neal Morse Band, and just when I start to think about it and really sit down to rewrite the Jesus musical, Michael calls and says, "You're not going to believe this. I think I've got a record deal for Jesus Christ the Exorcist." So it all kind of happened all at the same time, and then we worked on the deal. By the time we got the contract signed, it was almost exactly like the same week that we performed Jesus Christ the Exorcist at Morse Fest. So to me, it seemed all very providential.
Sure. It just definitely came together. I'm curious for you, Neal, any musician that I've known that has a piece of music that they've created and that they're extremely proud of, which you obviously were with this, otherwise you wouldn't have held on to it for so long waiting for the opportunity. A lot of times what ends up happening is they start picking it apart. They take pieces of this for this project they're working on and another piece here and another piece there. How did you avoid the pitfalls of kind of picking it apart and, piecing it out to other projects that you do? Because you do a lot of work.
Yeah. I never even considered that. The truth is I put it on the shelf and I didn't even listen to it for, I think I played it for somebody in maybe the last time would have been like 2014 or something like that. And then it was on the shelf for like 4 or 5 years and I never really even listened to it. So it wasn't in my mind to grab anything from it. Okay.
That makes sense. Now, Neal, you obviously worked with some amazing people, musically, maybe not household names to everybody, but clearly talent on a different level. Talk a little bit about who you chose to work with you on this release and, how you determined what parts go to which person to present the music the way you wanted it.
Right. Well, that was quite a challenge. And it was really my wife's idea to have Eric Gillette play drums.
Okay.
We were trying to figure out, this was for the live performance, we were trying to figure out, what would make the most sense without, having Mike Portnoy. So that was a great idea. I don't know if I would have thought of that. She just said, Eric plays drums really well, doesn't he? I'm like, yes. And she's like, I bet people would like to come and see Eric play this thing. I was like, yeah, that's a great idea.
Sure.
And she also had the idea, my wife also had the idea for Talon David in the role of Mary. It was literally 5 weeks before the performance, and I did not have a Mary. Okay. I was struggling. I'd been talking to different singers, and by the time they sent me, their demos, singing the role, and I realized that they weren't really, quite right for the role. It just took a lot of time, and there I was. And my wife Sherry, she suggested Talon, who went to school with my son, and I knew that she was great,
right?
Because I'd seen her perform in different musicals at school,
right?
And I knew she was in college. But, I just thought, man, does she have the experience? You think she can pull this off? I don't know.
Right.
And so I sent Talon the track, and when she sent me back her vocal on it, I was obviously sold.
Sure.
And she was really the surprise hit of the festival. I mean, she was amazing. And then as far as the musicians go, it was pretty much of a no-brainer to use all the Neal Morse Band guys, Randy George, Bill Hubauer. Those guys are just amazing and really diligent and just so kind and helpful. And, Paul Bilatovich, I'd seen him on Cruise to the Edge.
Okay.
And he plays in the Carl Palmer Band, and I actually got up with Carl Palmer Band and sang Lucky Man on the cruise.
Oh, wow.
With them, and that was really cool. And it just came to my mind. You know, sometimes stuff will just come into your mind at a particular juncture, and you'll just feel the hand of God in it. I just remember being with Paul and thinking, "Hey, Paul, I'm working on this musical. Would you want to play on it?" And he's like, "Sure." You know, so that was how Paul Bilatovich came in. Of course, Ted was my first choice for Jesus.
Right.
Because I just love his voice, and I just thought he'd be perfect for it, and of course he is. And Nick and, all the other guys. Rick Florian, I didn't really know, but other people told me about him. And,
right.
And when I heard his voice, I knew, wow, that's going to be amazing. So, yeah, and then Jake Livgren was really quite the find. I had heard his voice through a friend of mine named Bill Evans, who has done a lot of recordings with Jake.
Okay.
And I knew he had a killer voice. So, I was looking for I needed a lot of men with high ranges.
Right.
Like you typically would need if you were going to put on Jesus Christ Superstar. You need a lot of men with high ranges. And so I started scouring the countryside for people. And I talked to a lot of people that didn't have the time to do it as well. I sent an email to Kip Winger. I sent an email to Michael Sweet. But, I think what we wound up with was really great.
Sure. No, it definitely is. Now, Neal, no secret that, Christianity as a whole is very much under attack right now, in the public eye, I guess. And I'm curious for you, as a person of faith and as somebody that did such an expansive release that is obviously Christian in tone, what was that? Is that something that you have to think about and think, this is going to be a tough run to get people to give it a listen and judge it fairly and not come in with the biases of the day and, things like that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like that's kind of not my part.
Okay.
I feel like my part as a writer and an artist is to express my heart and do what I feel like, I need to do, or what I'm supposed to do.
Sure.
And then, I try not to judge or expect too much.
Okay.
So of course, I hope that people will embrace this. I don't think, in fact, I know that a lot of the people that really love this album already, the people that were at Morse Fest, for example, I don't know. I'm sure many of them are not Christians.
Sure.
Just like many people aren't Christians that enjoy Jesus Christ Superstar. So no, I don't. It's definitely not a prerequisite.
Right.
Do I hope that people's hearts are touched and that they have some kind of a spiritual experience with it? Yes, of course I do.
Sure.
But it is certainly not mandatory. We'll leave that up to God.
Right. And from listening to it, it's an interesting thought. I was thinking about it, and I was like, this is the kind of thing that could play both in a place of of a non-religious place, and obviously thinking like a Broadway. This would be a perfect Broadway thing. At the same time, I could completely see you going around and doing, even like big churches and stuff, just because it does have such a message that is just not prevalent today in today's society. It's much more steeped in Christianity than I think people have gotten away from that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's refreshing. And I'll tell you honestly, I'm not the most, I'm definitely not the Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday church guy, but it's refreshing to hear something that is pure in message and at the same time does not beat you over the head with preaching, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. As I was writing it, really, I was going from the book.
Right.
I tried to, the only embellishments that I really put in, or that sometimes I had Jesus sing words that he said maybe to someone else, and I'll have him sing them to Mary, or I embellish, like rather than saying, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do, I say, Father, forgive them their envy and pride. They do not know whom they crucified. Father, forgive them and heal them too. They do not know what they do. So I just kind of expand some of the thoughts, but I think almost all of it should be acceptable as the Gospels are. Of course, some people, of course, are offended by the Gospels, but maybe the music will be good enough. In the same way, when I was a kid, I wasn't a Christian,
right.
And I loved Jesus Christ Superstar because I love the music.
Sure.
So, there's that as well. And I hope it finds a place in people's hearts.
Sure, no question. And not to turn this into a religious discussion, but I've always had that theory of, even if you don't believe in Jesus, heaven, hell, God, etc., if you don't believe in any of that, you could just follow certain teachings from the Bible. The Ten Commandments comes to mind immediately, and just be like, all right, that's a pretty good way to live. You don't have to be a Bible thumping Christian to just live your life well. And there's good teachings there.
Right. Well, that was one of the things I think that is unique about Jesus Christ the Exorcist is there's a lot of stories that I tell. There's a lot of his teaching I think there's more of his teaching in this show than there is in a lot of musicals or movies and plays that have tackled the same subject matter. I wanted to put a lot of the teaching in there because I think it's very valuable. Sure. And, like, for example, the Passion of the Christ and Jesus Christ Superstar only really deal with the last 3 days of Jesus' life. But I kind of briefly go through his ministry and go through the whole 3.5 years. So I think that's pretty cool. I also tell stories in there that I don't know have ever been written about in music.
Sure.
Like the Madman of the Gadarene story, for example, which is if I had to pick one song, one number, I don't know. It's not the most moving, but it's the most interesting and fun musically, and I think it would be great on the stage.
Sure. Is
the Madman of the Gadarene number. I just love that one.
Absolutely. Now, Neal, you mentioned the stage, and you mentioned at the beginning of this interview that it was pitched around and it wasn't picked up to do like Broadway or whatnot. Now that you have it completed and now that you're going to have it released, will you take another run at Broadway, or have you already taken another run to try and get it produced?
Not really. I've sent it to a few people, but no, I'm not really pursuing that. My feeling has been the same feeling I've had for the last 10 years, which is, let's just kind of consider and wait and pray and see what happens.
Okay.
I feel like if this is well received, then it'll have a future.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Well, Neal, the release is called Jesus Christ the Exorcist. When's it out on Frontiers?
June 14th.
June 14th. And for people that, whether you're religiously focused or not, if you just like a good rock opera type story, whether it's Operation Mindcrime or The Crimson Idol or whatnot, this fits perfectly into that realm as well. It's a really, really great long form story. It's something people should pick up. And Neal, where should people go to find out more information about the release and about what you're doing and where you're going to be, etc.?
Well, you can go to radiantrecords.com or nealmorse.com. Okay. Radiant Records has a little more information.
Okay.
I also started my own streaming app called Waterfall Streaming, and it'll be on there. You can join Waterfall Streaming, go to waterfallstreaming.com. That has everything I've ever done with every band I've ever been in on it. And so that's a cool thing. But yeah, also Frontiers Records. I don't know what their website is, but they'll have all the information on it also.
Okay. All right, excellent. Well, Neal, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track to wrap the interview up with. Maybe tell us a quick story. So what would you like us to wrap this one up with?
Well, I think I would want to wrap it up with the Madman of the Gadarene.
All right.
Which is kind of like a little bit of a Gentle Giant, if you know who they are.
Sure.
A little bit of a Gentle Giant vocal style piece, progressive rock piece about Jesus dealing with this crazy guy in the Gadarenes.
All right. Well, let's check it out right now. This is the Madman of the Gadarene. It is Neal Morse from Jesus Christ the Exorcist right here on your Classic Metal Show.